Hello, everyone. Today we're going to go over order verification and order entry. So when you guys log in, you're going to see your dashboard here. People call it the dashboard or your home screen. And what you're looking at is your orders card. So when you look at this card, essentially you never want anything in the red. Right now, we're at the very start of rolling this out. So the reason why we have such a high number of orders to verify is simply that we have to work through verifying every resident in your community's medication list. So, of course, once we get through this process and everything is running the way that it should, you guys will never have this amount of orders to verify. Once everything is said and done, you'll only have to verify orders that are coming through the pharmacy as they do. That said, when you're looking at your dashboard and you're looking at the orders card, when you see anything in the red here, what that means is it's the pharmacy sending over an order for you guys as nurses to verify. So that could happen because there's a renewal of a already existing prescription, or maybe a resident went out to a provider and has a new order coming through. And so that provider e-scripted or ordered the medication through the pharmacy that you use. And then the pharmacy is sending the order to us to verify. What you want to do to kind of start the process is click on anything in the red. It doesn't matter which red item you click on, just click on one of them. Once you do that, just wait for the screen to pop up, and then you're always going to come here to resolution queue. You can see when I click on resolution queue, I get all of these items here. The idea is that we want these all to say 0 after them. For now, what I would do is just start at the very top, right? So we're just going to click on the very top one. What that does is brings us to our order resolution queue. These are all orders that we have to verify. So as I scroll down, you can kind of see, right, that these will say verify this order. It's telling us what we have to do. One thing we want to remember is that we never want to verify an order directly from this screen. Okay, the reason for that is if I go to verify this order, it will just pop the order up and ask me to verify it. But I won't be able to first see the resident's current med list, other medications they may be taking, and if there is a possible duplicate. So you never want to verify it from here because you just don't have the information you need to follow the process through accurately. So when you are ready to verify a resident's meds, you always want to click on the resident's name, which will bring you to the resident's profile. So you can see now we're in Sharon's profile. It brings me automatically to our order section. And if I scroll down, you can see that I have to verify all of these medications, right? So what I always tell folks is just do one at a time, nice and slow. Because of course, if you're looking at all of these, it can feel a little bit overwhelming, right? But as long as we're processing it one order at a time, it definitely makes the process easier. What we want to make sure we have before we verify an order is we want to have the order in front of us, right? We want to make sure we have the signed order in front of us so we can compare that signed order to what the pharmacy has sent over. Sometimes there are mistakes. The pharmacies do make mistakes, and maybe the instructions are not accurate. Sometimes the dosing could be inaccurate. It doesn't always happen, but it's possible. So we want to make absolutely sure we're comparing it to our signed order. So as we work through this process specifically, getting every resident's medications verified so we can go live in EMAR, we want to make sure that we have every resident's most current signed med list available to us. Because when we sit down to work through this process, it's much easier if I have the accurate med list in front of me so I can start just comparing the orders and working through the process. So once we're ready, I have the paper order in front of me. I'm ready to verify my first order. I just click on Verify New. What that does is it opens up the order. You can see if I scroll up to the very top, right, we're going to kind of work our way through. So what you want to do is start at the top left-hand side and start answering the questions, right? So up here, almost always you're going to do written because we don't do telephone orders and all of that. So you guys are just going to select that it is in fact a written order. Down here, you're choosing the provider that ordered that medication. This pulls directly from your resident's contact list. So, whatever providers are attached to the specific resident, that's where this is pulling from. So, if you ever don't have a provider available in this dropdown that you need, you would have to go to that resident's contact list, add the provider to the resident's contacts, and then it will pop up as available in this dropdown. So now we're just verifying the information, right? So we're working our way down nice and slow. Written, this is the provider, making sure that the medication and the dose is accurate. It matches our paper order. The strength is accurate. Tablet, oral. When you get to dispense as written, you guys never have to change this. Just leave it no. Order date, you're always going to leave that as it is. What this means is this is the date that the pharmacy received the order from the ordering provider. Okay, so we're going to leave this. We don't need to adjust this. When you get to additional physician directions, the only thing you have to remember is just don't use it. Just pretend it doesn't exist. You don't want to type anything in this box. When you get down to diagnosis, this can be a little bit confusing because you can see it has an asterisk for both. You only need to choose one or the other. If you choose this section, this pulls from the database, right? So you would just start typing in the diagnoses and it pulls from all the diagnoses we have in our database. If you don't want to use that, you can simply just manually type in the diagnosis here, right? I personally prefer to just type in the diagnosis manually. I think it's easier than searching for the diagnoses this way. But again, you just need to choose one or the other when it comes to diagnoses. Everything else that has a red asterisk, we do need to answer all of those. So when we get down to here, special instructions, again, it's similar to additional physician directions where you don't want to type anything in these boxes, okay? This will make more sense as I work my way down and explain it in more detail. So now you can see we're at the directions portion of the order, right? But before we get into that, we want to come over here to the right-hand side. The way you guys want to think about this is you don't have to really do anything over here on the right-hand side of the order information section unless you plan to rotate a site. If there's a site you're rotating because you're putting a patch on, left back, right back, maybe there's a medication we're doing, left nostril, right nostril. If you need to rotate the site, then of course you would be using this. I don't always go over that in the training now because just typically we don't get a lot of those. It doesn't happen frequently. So what I suggest is if you do need to rotate a site, that you just give me a call. I'll walk you through it. Happy to do that. Or Renee, or your resident care director. So just to back up, we're in our order information section, right? We've worked our way down the left-hand side, top to bottom, making sure all of this information is correct and matches our paper order. We don't need to change this. We don't need to change the date. We are not going to use this. We're going to choose one or the other when it comes to a diagnosis. We don't need to type anything in special instructions. Over on my right-hand side, I only need to really use this if I'm going to go ahead and rotate a site. So now we've completed the portion of this order, which is just the basic order information. Now we're ready to add our order directions, right? So same deal, we're going to start on the left-hand side, work our way top to bottom. So as you go through your order, you're making sure, okay, is it written? Yes. It's a routine medication, it's a scheduled medication, right? Not a PRN. It's always going to be a fixed dose. We don't allow, 1 to 2 tabs, of course. So we always want a fixed, accurate dosing schedule. The only time you would ever use variable if you were entering some sort of sliding scale insulin. So again, routine, fixed. How many tabs are we giving? 1 tab, 2 tabs. If you guys are ever giving half a tab, just so you know, it would be 0.5. Okay? So half tabs is always going to be 0.5. Working your way down, tablet. Again, we're just verifying this information, right? Now, when we get to frequency, that's 1 time a day, 2 time a day, etc. If you're doing once a day, you guys want to type in the word one. Okay, so you're going to go ONE. You can see when you do that, you get a lot of options, right? You can see all of these different options. you're just going to choose the one that's most appropriate. So 1 time per day. Now you're under order interval. This is it daily, weekly, monthly, etc. In this case, right, the order is 1 tab by mouth once weekly. So we're going to do weekly. Now, of course, when we're looking at this order, we want to make sure it aligns with the date we're supposed to be giving it. So this is 1 tab by mouth once weekly on Tuesdays. So we want to make sure that down here on our weekly, right, we're selecting Tuesday. So I have my instructions. I'm verifying that I selected Tuesday. Now I'm down here to the pharmacy instructions. So I'm making sure that these pharmacy instructions clearly match and align with my paper order, right? If they do, great. Now I'm going to add in the time of administration. Many of our buildings, we do AM, PM Med Pass. If you guys do not do an AM, PM Med Pass, that's okay. Type in the time that you want to schedule it at. So if it's 8 a.m., you're going to do an 8 and you'll get 8 a.m. If it's AM, you might do an A for AM and select it that way. If it's bedtime, you would do BED for bedtime and go ahead and select it that way. So you're just choosing the time that you want this to be administered, right? So we're going to go with 8 a.m. Now, when you get to this section, this is just applying vital signs to the specific medication. So for instance, if this was a blood pressure med and we needed to get a blood pressure for some reason before we gave it, this is where you would select that option. If you guys don't do that, just disregard it and don't worry about it. Over here is where you're going to assign it to the correct nurse or the correct person, right? Whoever is going to be administering this medication. So now you can see we're up here. We're at the directions. We want to verify our information one more time, just making sure that everything with the red asterisk is in fact filled in correctly, the way that we intend it to be, and it matches our, paper order. Once we've gotten down to the bottom, you can see we're at the very bottom. We want to head over to the right-hand side of the start date and time. Now, the start date and time is really important because the system kind of will give you a stop. If you're trying to start a medication in the middle of a shift, sometimes it will give you a little red pop-up that says, hey, you can't do that. The resident will get 2 doses or what have you. So the way you want to think about it, the easiest way to think about it is simply, you don't want to start a med in the middle of a shift. So our options would be, we would back it up to the start of day shift, right? So we could back it up to 7. So, let's say it's 9 o'clock in the morning. We want the resident to receive this med in the AM. Then I'm going to back it up to the start of day shift so that the resident can receive it this morning and the staff member can sign it out. If it's too late, the resident does not need to receive it today, maybe it's going to start tomorrow, then you would just start that medication tomorrow at midnight. So if you know the medication is not going to be available, it's not going to be initiated till the next day, then you would always just go with whatever the next day's date is, and then the start date. So for us, right, today it's Thursday, we would do Friday at midnight. If it's an antibiotic that has a stop date, it's times 7 days or what have you, you would go ahead and put that stop date in here. The cool thing about the stop date is if you know, okay, it's 14 days for this medication and then it's DC'd or it's 7 days, you can erase this and put 7 days and click anywhere out here in the white and it will automatically choose your end date for you. So, or you can manually put in your end date. So if you know it's starting on the 10th, right, and it's times 7 days, you could count your 7 days and put your end date in, yourself. So if the last dose is in the AM, you would end it at the start of second shift on that day. And you can see here, it tells me, yep, this is the duration is 7 days. So you're going to put it in yourself if there is a stop date and you can verify that, that is in fact correct. And we'll get into that more during this training. I just wanted to provide that for you guys. In this case, we don't have a stop date, right? We know that this is ongoing. It's every week on Tuesday. The instructions are perfect. Now, before I save my order, something that's really, really important is that you always want to check your gray ribbon. This is your final product, right? So you want to kind of go through and just make sure that you agree that these instructions, this start time, this information here, and this is accurate as it relates to the paper order that you have. Once you're confident, yep, this is accurate, it matches my paper order, then you can come down here and save your order. So you're gonna come over here and hit approve. Once you hit approve, it's gonna kick you back out to the residence profile. You can see we're still in the order section, right? Now I'm gonna come down and I'm gonna find that order that I just approved. We call this like the 3 checks. So we saved the order, right? We checked it in the gray ribbon. And now left to right, you can see this is the approved order, right? Because we don't have a big orange box. So we approve this order, and now it's an accurate current order on the med list. So from left to right, we're going to go ahead and make sure, again, this is our second check, and all this information is accurate. We signed it to the correct person. We put it at the correct time. This is when it will start. This is when it's going to show up on the EMAR, right? So once I've done that, left to right, made sure this information is perfect, I'm going to go ahead and come up here from my final check and go to EMAR. So once I go to EMAR, I'm going to come down here and find the medication that I verified. You can see it here. And I'm going to again make sure that that information is 100% accurate. It matches my paper order, right? And if I drag this bar over right here, I can see, is it going to start when I intended, right? And yep, it's going to start on the first Tuesday after I initiated the order. And I can see that it does in fact fall on every Tuesday. So the blue hand, when you see that, that just means it's ready to be given. It's good to go. Of course, if you guys see a red hand, that would mean it's late. If you see a gray box, that just means that's when we initiated the order, but it wasn't due to start, in this case, until Tuesday, right? So once I've checked myself in the EMAR, I can pop out and move on to my next order, right? So I'm going to go back to my orders tab, and I'm going to move on to verifying the next order. So now we have this medication here, right? And I'm ready to start working through the process of this med. So I'm going to go ahead and click on verify order. And we're going to follow that same process. We're going to start at the top, written. Of course, we have our paper signed order in front of us, right? And we're just verifying that information. We don't have to change this. We never have to change this. We're not going to use this, right? We're going to choose one or the other here from our kind of drop down list, or do we just want to manually type that in? You can go ahead and manually type it in here. Special instructions we're not going to use. We don't want to move over into our directions yet, right? We want to still come over to the right-hand side and ask ourselves, do we need to rotate a site? If we do, of course, we're going to use this. If we do not need to rotate a site, we're just going to move on. So we're done putting our order information in. We've made sure this is all correct. Right now we're ready to do our directions. Same deal. Written, yep, we're kind of making sure that this is all accurate once a day, or one tab, excuse me. We know this order is by mouth twice a day, right? So in that case, we're going to do TWO for 2 times a day. If I do TWO, you can see I get all of these options, right? But if I do BID, I simply get one option. So either is appropriate, you guys. If you want to do BID, you're just going to get one option, which is fine. But if you're looking for a more detailed set of options, you would do 2, right? And you can see I get much more detailed options available to me if I do 2. Same deal if it was 3 times a day, you would do TID or 3. Whoops, right? So we do 3, you get more options. Same with 4 times a day. You would do that, right? And you get 4 times a day, or you type in 4 for for 4 times a day. So either is totally fine. It's whatever you guys are needing for that specific order. So I'm going to do BID. Order interval is, are we going to be doing this daily, weekly, monthly? In this case, of course, it's daily. One really important thing to know while I'm thinking of it is if an order is every other day, right? If you get an order that is every other day, then you're still going to do daily, but you're going to change this 1 to a 2. So now it's every 2 days. A lot of folks try to do weekly and then choose every other day from that little, weekly tab, but you don't want to do that. You want to stick with daily and just change this 1 to a 2 if it's every other day. If it's every 72 hours, same thing. You're going to change that 1 to a 3, right? Of course, if the order is specifically like Coumadin, it's every Wednesday, Thursday, and Friday, then you would do weekly and choose those specific days. But if it's just simply the order says every 72 hours, every 48 hours, you're just going to go ahead and change this to a 1, from a 1, to a 2, or from a 1 to a 3. Okay. So for this specific order here is twice a day with meals. So we know, okay, 2 times per day, daily, every 1 day. Okay. So we know it's with meals, right? So now we have to kind of decide, is it going to be in the morning and in the evening, right? So most likely we're going to do 8 a.m. for breakfast and 5 p.m. for dinner. So we have 1 tab by mouth twice a day with meals may crush. So here we have 8 a.m., 5 p.m. We don't need to do any vital signs, so we're going to leave that. We're making sure it's assigned to the appropriate person who is in fact going to be administering this medication. So at the bottom, you can see we're at the very bottom. Now I'm going to pop over here to my start date and time. And we talked about making sure we're not trying to start a med in the middle of a shift, right? So first, I want to go to the day we're actually in. So today is the 9th. And then I have to think about, okay, when do I want to start this? It's obviously too late for her to get her AM dose this morning, but I do want her to get her evening dose. So I'm going to start this at the start of second shift. Right? So we have the start of second shift, today's date. So I can make absolutely sure that this resident will in fact get the 5 p.m. dose. There's no stop date, so I don't need to put a stop date in. And we have who it's administered by, right? So one thing I want to mention before I forget is I understand that in your community, sometimes a nurse is actually physically giving them medication. Sometimes the staff might be, the caregivers might be giving the medication. So of course, they're not going to be signing the med out one at a time, right? If it is a medication that you just want a profile only, meaning you don't want a nurse to specifically be assigned to give it, you don't really want it assigned to anyone specifically, you really just want it as a profile. You just want it to show up on the current med list. Then the workaround for that currently, we have you already working on this for you guys, but just currently, if your caregivers or your aides are giving the medications and you do not want the medication specifically assigned to that aide, you just want it profile only, you're going to choose outside service without charting. Once you choose that here, you can see it's assigned to outside service without charting. That really just makes the medication profile only for you, which means that no one is going to specifically be signing that med out. It's just going to show up in the current med list. We have you already working on getting you guys an option that says family manages and profile only, but that hasn't been completed yet. So just in the meantime, if you do not want it assigned to a specific human being to sign out, just go with this option for now, outside service without charting, and until we get that that workflow fixed for you guys. So you can see that here. But if you do want it assigned, right, a nurse is going to be administering this medication and signing it out, then you would choose in-house and wellness nurse. It should automatically kick over the appropriate nurse. Your guys' setup is on AL. You have AL wellness nurse. then you have a Vita wellness nurse, and then you have one overnight wellness nurse option. So if it's an overnight medication, it should automatically say overnight nurse, which is, of course, the whole community. So in this case, we're going to assign it to a Vita nurse day shift, right? And we made sure our start date and time is appropriate. Now, before I save it, right, I'm going to check my gray ribbon left to right, making sure that everything looks good there. Once I'm confident that everything is in fact correct, it matches my order, I'm going to pop down here and approve that. And now my second check, if you get this pop up, guys, just don't worry about it. It's just saying that it's a basically an over the counter med, so it's not attached to an NDC code. Just proceed. Once it kicks you back out into your current med list, right? Our second check is go down, find that med. Here it is. There's no big orange box now, right? Because we verified it. So left to right, we want to make sure that this information is perfect. It matches our order, our paper signed order. Everything looks good. I scheduled it the way I intended. I assigned it the way I needed to. If that is perfect, I'm going to pop up to my EMAR for my third and final check. We're going to pop down here and find that med. Here it is, sorry. You're going to read your instructions, right? Making sure everything is in fact correct. You're going to drag your bar over. We can see that now we didn't want to start it in the morning, right? We wanted her to receive her PM dose. So we did schedule it perfectly. She will in fact get her PM dose tonight. Everything looks good. And then we can go ahead and move on. You can see how this is valuable, right? To come to EMAR and check your orders, because if we had an antibiotic that was 7 days or prednisone taper or something like that, you would be able to count your days, right? And check that everything is in fact correct, which is super helpful. This is why we do the 3 checks I'm talking about, is just to make sure that we don't make a mistake or that we catch a mistake if the pharmacy sent an order over that has one. So now I'm done with my third check. I'm going to go back to my orders and work through my next order. So I'm going to end this training because it's long and sometimes the clips are too long for me to send. And I'm going to do a part 2 to this. Hopefully you guys find this helpful. Of course, you know I'm always available. Never hesitate to reach out. And thank you so much.